Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Hey, she's back. So you're lucky you're actually sitting in that seat. I was going to replace you with Lucy.
And I heard that she was a big hit.
Yes, you haven't listened to that episode yet, but you need
to. Haven't. One of these days.
So, yes, you were gone for an unexpectedly long time. Just to recap for everyone, Melanie and our 2 of our daughters, Isabella and Sophia, went down to Austin, Texas, a little more than a week ago now.
For my brother's baby shower.
Brother's wife's baby shower.
Yeah. Well, it's his baby shower, too. It's his baby.
Sure. These days, you have to specify. So it was only supposed to be a 4-day trip. And then a couple days in, Sophie got sick.
Basically, we went to the baby shower, and she came home, and she went upstairs and hid in her room for a bit to decompress, and came back down, and she was shivering and running a fever and looked like she was very sick.
Now, it wasn't COVID. You took a COVID test and it was negative. But she did get a spike of temp of 104.
It took a while to figure it out, but eventually, process of elimination, I figured out that it was a sinus infection. Back in September, we all got sick.
Mm-hmm.
Including Sophie. And I took her to the urgent care, and the doctor said they didn't think that she had pneumonia or bronchitis or anything, but she might have a sinus infection. And they gave me a prescription of antibiotics in case she didn't get better. But she did seem to get better. At least she didn't seem to get any worse. And I kind of forgot about it. And in the past couple of months, she sort of had a lot more sniffles and nothing bad. Like, she never ran a fever or anything like that. But I think that flying just pushed her over the edge into mild sinus, possibly on the edge of infection, to full-blown sinus infection.
Okay. And so we had to get
I had the prescription for antibiotics, and I decided to just transfer the prescription to a pharmacy in Austin and feed her antibiotics and see if it got better. If not, I was going to take her to urgent care there. But I just thought, since we already had antibiotics and it was a very, very likely scenario, I would just go for it.
The thing is, but she had to be fever free for 24 hours. And so
to fly.
Yeah. So we had to first, we push back your return flight from Tuesday to Thursday, and then Wednesday rolled around and she still wasn't better, and you were just getting her the amoxicillin then. So we rescheduled for Saturday and crossed our fingers, because any later than the Saturday before Christmas, and we were caught in trouble.
Yeah.
I was wondering even if you could get tickets, because we had originally thought, well, what about Monday? But it's like, let's not do that. Let's see if we can make Saturday, which turned out better because it was a direct flight.
Yeah, we ended up actually getting a direct flight, which was better than our original flight.
Southwest bus in the skies, stopping at every airport on the way.
Yeah. Anyway, it worked out okay. She did not have a super pleasant flight. Like, her ears got stopped up again, but she still has not run a fever since I started giving her the amoxicillin. So
that's good.
We will.
Yeah. So, but in any case, how was the baby shower?
The baby shower was awesome. They had it outside.
Because
it's Texas, in a park. Also because germs.
Sure.
And it was lovely. My sister-in-law, Amber, is a professional chef. She's a private chef and she cooks for people. So it's not surprising that the spread of food was awesome.
Yeah, I'm turning green with envy, folks. This whole episode, I'm going to be green with envy.
There was her grandmother's potato salad, and there was hummus and vegetables and salsas and dips and sausages and cookies and cakes. And
by the way, you brought me a gift.
I did. Amber's grandfather makes sausage
professionally, like he has a company.
Yeah. So I got some sausages. He was handing them out for free. Just like, here, anyone want some sausages? I brought a whole cooler. Here, take some sausages. Here, take 2. And telling us that this was his grandparents' recipe. They came from Sicily. They originally came in through New Orleans and then moved from New Orleans to Houston. And yeah.
Nice.
So they're hot Italian sausages. He also makes mild, but I figured I'd get the hot.
Thank you for your Sicilian husband. Nice.
So,
and then, what else did you do while you were there? What other visiting type things?
Let's see. We went to County Line, which is my favorite barbecue place.
Oh, I remember going there once.
It's right on the creek, Bull Creek, and they have the best food.
Oh,
so on
the pictures were killing me.
So on Saturday, we met my brother Tim and his wife Amber there. My sister was also visiting from Dallas, and my mom went with us. My dad skipped out because he has a hard time with his hearing aids and his post-stroke aphasia. He really just can't follow conversations in loud restaurants, and so he generally skips the restaurants and any place where there's crowds.
Right.
But yeah, we that was nice. And then, well, so Sophie got sick Sunday night, and after that, we didn't really do much with her. We drove around town a few times. We stopped and got ice cream at Amy's Ice Cream, and Bella and I went thrift store shopping, and we went to my favorite toy store, which is Toy Joy, which has an amazing selection of toys. A lot of like weird, offbeat, unique, handcrafted stuff, import stuff from Europe and other places. Like, it's not your normal Toys R Us sort of toy store.
Right.
So that was fun. And I met my friend and blogger Emily Cook for coffee one day. That was fun.
Cool.
And
awesome.
Yeah, it was a nice trip. We mostly just hung around my house. I played Scrabble with my mom and watched my dad take pot shots at squirrels with his air rifle in the backyard. You know, normal stuff.
Country boy living in the city. So
I at one point I expected him to try to hand the rifle over to Isabella because she was telling him that she had done a rifle merit badge in Scouts, and he's like, "Oh, so you know how to shoot this?" And she says, "Yeah." And he didn't hand it to her, but it looked like he might.
Yeah. If Anthony were there, he would have taken it.
He would have.
Yes. So for us, you know, it was more the same as what I talked about last time. It was weird single parenting for a week. And I was just saying before we started recording, the last time I spent an extended period of time with you away and me single parenting was like 10 years ago when you went to a wedding. And was it the Houston wedding?
No, it was my friend Richard's wedding in Florida.
Richard's wedding. So like 10 years ago.
With baby Anthony.
Baby Anthony, right. Oh, Houston was with Bella. That's right. But baby Anthony, yes. And so I was, so at the time it would have been Ben and Bella and Sophie as toddlers, which that would have been harder, I think. That was probably harder. But that was just a weekend. So the big thing was being the only adult that they could go to every time they needed something. I mean, they were mostly taking care of themselves, and they mostly got along. I mean, it was no worse than usual, maybe even a little better than than usual. But just having to be the decision maker for everything, you know. And then the other thing was meals, like having to stop working. Like I cook a lot, but I cook on the nights when I'm not like super busy right up till 5:30, you know, or I'll come in and I'll help, you know, we'll work together. But, you know, it's at 4:30, I'm still deep in, you know, elbow deep in podcast stuff. And I'm like, I can't go cook dinner. And so we ate out more than I ever would otherwise. So that was tough. That was a little hard, but managed to get the dishwasher fixed. Had the guy come in and fix the dishwasher, and it turned out it was a clogged line. And so I spent all that money on a repairman for something I probably could have fixed, but it's fixed. And then did manage to do some laundry. So like, it wasn't a giant pile when you came home. They were not wearing dirty clothes. So that's good. So, I mean, we got by. In fact, the house was in pretty good shape, right? No dirty dishes in the sink, no giant pile of laundry.
That's true.
The living room was pretty well picked up comparatively. So on Wednesday, I was working, and I saw someone in passing say something along the lines of how spare the tree lots are, the Christmas tree lots. And normally we would have gotten our tree last Sunday, usually like the 3rd or 4th, but somewhere in between the 3rd and 4th week of Advent, we usually get our tree, right? Usually a week and a half out from Christmas is a pretty average for us. So Wednesday was that week and a half. And I'm seeing these reports about trees are extra expensive. The tree lots are running out if you wait too long. And then you're telling me you might not be back till Monday. And I'm like, we can't wait any longer. We have to go get the tree. If we don't get a tree now, we might not have a tree. I don't want a Charlie Brown tree that I've hacked off something in the forest, the top of. I'll do a Christmas Vacation, Clark Griswold. So I packed up the kids, took the van over to Home Depot, where we usually go to get our trees, which Home Depot has a surprisingly decent selection usually. They're pretty good for that. I also wanted to get some more lights and things like that. And so we got there, and there were maybe 30 trees left, which usually when we go, there's dozens of trees of all sizes, you know, small trees, tall trees, middling-sized trees. They had 7 to 8 feet. You can get them for $60, $70, or $90. $10 a foot or $10.50 a foot, or whatever that comes out to. I said, I think I'll go for the $70 trees and just grab one. And that was it. And so we brought it home, set it up. We put lights on it, but we didn't decorate till today.
Right.
We did not decorate till today.
The girls would not have forgiven you if you decorated the tree without them.
I told the others. Well, the others didn't want to decorate until you guys were here anyway. So that would have been weird and sad.
Yeah.
So we did our usual decoration today, where I set up the camera and we do a time lapse of it, and I posted it on my Facebook page of the time lapse video of that. And that goes as pretty normally. I mean, it's not.
It's a lot less dramatic now that they're older. They're all like, I thought there was more ornaments, and they said, yeah, I thought that last year too. It took longer when they were littler, and I had to hand each ornament to
every
each
fragile
child
ornament
and make sure that each child was carefully putting them on the tree.
Also, when they were little, they could only reach the bottom half of the tree. So the top half of the tree, we had to do that, you know. And so, yes, it took longer because you're handing them ornaments and then taking an ornament yourself and that whole thing. Now they can do the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier. But they all are involved. They all want to do it. They all want to hang ornaments. So it's not like there's the sullen teenager in the corner on their phone, you know, that sort of thing. So that's good. So let's talk about food.
Okay.
So one of the meals I made this week, I did a sous vide steak. I had some steaks in the freezer from this past summer that I never got around to grilling. And I thought I'd make some steaks. for dinner, and I decided to sous vide. And sous vide, in case you don't remember, you don't know, is that it's a sort of a water bath method. You put them in a vacuum sealed bag, the food, and then you have a special device like a sous vide water circulator. It goes on the edge of a bucket filled with water, and it heats the water up to a particular temperature and holds it there. And the idea is that you can bring food up to a temperature and hold it at that point. So for steak, like if you want medium rare, hold it at 121 forever, or 123, I think it did, forever. The longer it goes, the more tender it gets. So you don't want to do it too long, otherwise it turns into mush. But then when you want to finish it off, you take it out of the sous vide. And I had it in there for like 4.5 hours because it was frozen when it went in. So I think maybe even closer to 5 hours. And then you sear it off, and I sear it off in a cast iron skillet with butter and some garlic and some thyme. And, I did the butter basting where I spooned the butter on it. It was all right. Not as good as grilled, certainly. Grilling will always, the direct fire will always be better for me. But it was pretty good. Yeah. I did open up the back door before I started the searing on the skillet. And the smoke detectors did, go off at first, but not too long. I silenced it, and then it was fine from that. And it wasn't like wicked smoky because I did remember to open the door first. So that worked out. That one was pretty good. Another one I did was a matzo ball soup. It's Hanukkah, so I wanted to make a matzo ball soup. I used a boxed matzo ball recipe. The recipe I was looking at, did matzo balls from scratch, but I'm like, it's just me and the kids. Let's do the matzo ball recipe, from the box, and then the rest of it was from scratch. The rest of the soup, it was all right. It lacked something, and I think it lacked an acidity. So like it needed like lemon juice or wine or something along those lines. And maybe it would have been nice to have some like egg noodles or something in it, like some like a chicken noodle soup. It would have been better like that. But otherwise it was okay. So we had matzo ball soup. We had some leftovers. The kids, they didn't really like it. They thought the matzo ball was interesting at first, but they didn't really eat much of it. They ended up eating peanut butter jelly. And then tonight we made yakisoba, which is a Japanese pork noodle dish. And I would say that the pork and vegetables and noodle part was a hit, but the sauce that I made with it was not.
Yeah, they didn't really like the sauce.
So the sauce is I think it's supposed to be authentic. And where's the recipe? I'm trying to find it here. Here it is. So it's from a website called japan.recipetineats.com. And so I think it's from an Australian website because a lot of the ingredients are in grams and that sort of thing. But also they refer to things like ketchup as tomato sauce. In Australia, they call ketchup tomato sauce. But it uses like the Japanese bulldog sauces. Bulldog is a brand name, and that these barbecue quote unquote sauces that are adapted to Japanese tastes from American barbecue sauces from GIs at post World War II. And so Anthony complained that it was too fruity. He thought it was tasted fruity.
The bulldog sauce is pretty fruity.
Yeah. I think it is. It has some fruitiness to it. So maybe with a different sauce, we could try it again. I like the yakisoba noodles. So our supermarket carries like a yakisoba noodles in the produce section near the tofu. For some reason, I don't know why. I guess they need to be refrigerated, so that must be it. So I use those. So it was pretty good. I just I guess they would prefer a different sauce on it. So
they in generally don't really like sweet and savory together. I've noticed their palates are just like they want more tart with their savory, not sweet.
Yeah, I can see that. So you mentioned that you went to County Line Barbecue.
We did.
And you also went to another place down in Austin, Styles Switch Barbecue.
Yeah, we I think that was like this past Wednesday night or Thursday night. I don't even remember. We picked up from Style Switch. It was Wednesday night because my mom always goes on Wednesday nights. My parents are, well, they're creatures of habit. And every Wednesday night they pick up some takeout and eat that instead of cooking. It used to be Thursday nights when my mom had her bowling league and my dad would go out to dinner by himself to the local
Rondis
Mexican place around the corner,
which is no longer there.
Well, it's there. It's just under new ownership, and they refuse to go to it now. the new owners came in and they fired all the previous staff and they changed the menu, and my parents just won't go there anymore. But so then when my mom stopped bowling, they kept going out. She just joined my dad for going out for dinner. But then my dad eventually decided that he wanted to switch to Wednesday night because that way he could eat the leftovers on Thursday, whereas he doesn't eat meat on Fridays. So he wouldn't be eating the leftovers on Friday.
Right.
Anyway, like I said, creatures of habit. I went with my mom to the Stub Switch barbecue place.
The Style Switch.
Style Switch. I cannot remember the name of this place. I've never been there before. It was really good, though. I went with my mom. The guy behind the counter totally knew who she was and recognized her. And he even gave us a sample of the prime rib because he says, it's our Wednesday special. And I notice you're always here on Wednesdays.
That's when you know that they know you.
Right. It was good.
Did you just get brisket and stuff?
I got brisket. We got just individual plates. I got brisket. Somebody got ribs and brisket. Somebody else got chicken. I think my mom and Bella split a chicken plate between them. It was yummy.
They have oak smoked wings. That's interesting.
Oh.
First we smoke them, then we flash fry to finish, sauced and tossed to order in our house-made sauces.
The prime rib that they gave us as a sample was so tender. It was just like melt in your mouth tender. It was good. I was like, I would eat that prime rib. I would definitely come back for that.
Like, you have to go to confession for envy, jealousy, because I love barbecue. So because you were going to barbecue, I'm like, okay, we're going to barbecue here. And so we went to our local barbecue place that we've always gone to for years. Even when we lived up on the North Shore of Boston, there was the Tennessee's barbecue up there. And we went, and it was decidedly mediocre. The meat was kind of dry and gray and didn't have much of a smoke ring. The kids got beef ribs because they saw Sophie's County Line beef rib. And it was all right. It was kind of cartilaginous, it was kind of chewy a bit. I was disappointed, especially with how much you pay for it. It was disappointing. And even just like the restaurant itself, like the big containers of barbecue sauce were mostly empty. You could hardly get any sauce. It's really disappointing. We have to find a new barbecue place. There is a new one that's not far from us that I would love to try some of their stuff sometime. But yeah, it's always sad when a restaurant that you've always gone to kind of goes downhill a bit. It's not as good as you remember. And sometimes you just keep going out of nostalgia and a hope that maybe someday it will get back to it again.
Right.
So
I have to say, County Line did not disappoint. It was as good as I remembered it. And that was slightly surprising. I was a little bit braced for it to be not as good as I remembered it in my head. I have to say that the Tex-Mex that my parents brought in was okay, but the enchiladas were not the best enchiladas I've ever had. I kind of wish that we'd had a chance to go out to Chewy's because I know that I really love their enchiladas.
Oh yeah. So the last time we were all in Austin was 5 years ago. And I remember that was for your parents' 50th. And that was fantastic. Yeah, Chewy's was good. Arondis was still Arondis. That was always good. And Ruby's Barbecue was still open.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore.
But they're closed now. But Yeah, yeah. I go places. I go to visit the restaurants. That's my thing. I like to try the foods, the local foods. Yeah. All right. So that's what we've been eating. And one thing to look forward to is the supermarket. Our supermarket had rib roasts, Angus rib roast. By the way, it's not just choice or select rib roast. This is Angus rib roast on sale for $5.99 a pound. I got one. I saved $100 for it. So we're having that in Christmas. I'm really looking forward to that.
The other thing I brought back in addition to the sausage was tamales, which my mom had bought from the Knights of Columbus at their parish. And
which are the best ones?
If you know anything, the Knights of Columbus.
Knights of Columbus tamales in Texas are the best.
I mean, the best of the best is if you can find somebody's Mexican abuela who makes them. But
yeah.
I don't know anybody who's grandmother
short of
makes tamales.
Befriending somebody just because they have a Mexican abuela. This is the best. Yep. So, all right. So that's what we've been eating. So let's talk about reading and watching and that sort of thing. And I'll just kind of follow up. Last time when I was talking to Lucy, we had watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. For the kids had watched Rudolph for the first time and the Charlie Brown Christmas. And we continued our watch through the Christmas specials of my childhood. We watched Frosty the Snowman and Santa Claus Has Come Into Town and The Grinch Who Stole Christmas.
Did you discuss with Lucy that I do not really love any of these shows and that's why they've never seen them?
That might have come up. They were curious. They wanted to see them. So and I think they enjoyed them. I heard, I forget who, another podcast couple, Catholic podcast couple. I'm trying to remember who I heard it from, was talking about Santa Claus coming to town and being just weird and bizarre and not liking it. I'm like, how can you not love it?
I don't love it.
There are some very 60s moments in it. Like there's that one where the girl Jessica, who ends up being, spoiler alert, she ends up being Mrs. Claus. She sings this very 60s not psychedelic song. The song itself isn't psychedelic, but the animation kind of gets kind of funky, very 60s 2D animation. It's kind of weird. So there's a couple moments like that, but in general, I mean, the Burgermeister Burger is the funniest, and put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And Hopper the Penguin. So, yeah, it was good. We also watched The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, which was not as good as I remember. It was really hard to get a hold of that, by the way. It's hard to find online these days to watch. But I don't know. There's the song that You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. I mean, that part is good, but the rest of it was kind of, I don't know, weird. Everyone loves the dog though, the Grinch's dog.
Yeah.
He gets shanghaied. So that's always good. And then of course we also saw Frosty. Busy, the magician. Yeah. And this, the little girl who hops on the train with the snowman and to go to the North Pole. The parents. These things hit differently when you're an older. So there's one we didn't watch, which is The Year Without a Santa Claus. So we still need to watch that. The rest of us, you can go do whatever you want, but the rest of us are going to watch The Year Without a Santa Claus. That's get Heat Miser and Snow Miser. Oh, it's the best. Boom, boom, boom. Da-dum, da-dum, dum, dum,
I did not like any of those movies when I was a child.
This is my surprise face.
Yeah.
You were born old.
No.
And then there's the one that you hardly ever saw, which was was it Rudolph and the Baby New Year?
Oh, I really disliked that one.
I love that one. All the little islands were all like different eras in history. The year 1776, and there was like Ben Franklin was there. Oh, I love that one. Although Rock, the big scary bird, was kind of scared me as a kid. Anyway, that's enough of that. What did you watch while you were in Texas? You watched something with your parents.
Yeah, we were. Actually, with my mom, we watched a few episodes of Indoor because she'd never Andor because she'd never seen it. And then she wanted to watch something else, and Bella was up for a movie, and I ended up convincing that we were flipping through channels, and I saw a movie that I recognized as having wanted to see popped up on the menu.
Sure.
Thank you, menu. So we ended up watching The Banshees of Inisherin, which is a movie starring Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell.
It's an Irish movie starring Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell? Wow, what are the odds? Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, the writer-director is Martin McDonagh, who I studied when I was in grad school. I took a class on contemporary Irish drama, and Martin McDonagh, we read at least one, possibly more of his plays, and had several more of them summarized and explained for us because my professor was a huge fan. So I thought that would be fun to watch, and it is dark. It is really dark. It is really, really dark. I think my dad was bothered by it.
Wait, it's an Irish movie that's really, really dark?
Okay. It's dark comedy. So basically the premise
An Irish dark comedy.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
The premise is Brendan Gleeson and Colin Firth are best friends. Colin Farrell, not Firth, sorry. They're best friends. They live in a small island, fictional, off the coast of Ireland. And Brendan Gleeson is a fiddle player, and Colin Farrell is a farmer. And one day, Brendan Gleeson, this is how the movie starts, decides he doesn't want to be friends anymore. No real good reason, just Colin Farrell's boring, and he doesn't want to waste his time listening to him blather on anymore. And so he just says, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. And Colin Farrell does not understand why, and so attempts to persuade him to be friends. And this is where it turns dark, because Brendan Gleeson says, if you continue to bother me, I'm going to cut off a finger.
Hit one of his own fingers.
One of his own fingers. I'm going to mutilate myself if you continue to bother me.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. And then he actually follows through with it.
Oh.
And it escalates to house burning. Let's just say that. And somebody dies. I'm not going to tell you who, but somebody dies. So
what a hoot.
The other thing that we watched was Sophia and I had read Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen this past term. And so we had a movie day before Sophie got sick where Sophie and Isabella and I watched Sense and Sensibility, and they both loved it. It was the one with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet and Hugh Grant. And
which one is
what's his name who plays Snape? Alan Rickman. Alan Rickman. He's so great. Oh, I love him as Colonel Brandon. So that was a lot more lighthearted and did not have anybody cutting off their fingers.
What wasn't Alan Rickman good in? That's the thing. I mean,
Alan Rickman was good in everything.
Kate Winslet. No. Oh, Tom Wilkinson was in it. That's good. Hugh Grant. I was trying to think of, so Hugh Grant was Edward Ferrars. Okay, never mind. I don't really know Sense and Sensibility really that much anyway. So
no.
So
it's a great movie. It's a classic, and I was glad that we got the chance to watch it. I promised Sophie that when we finished the novel, we'd watch the film, and we just hadn't got a chance to do it. So this was perfect.
So, what have you been reading?
Okay, well, as you might
apparently,
as you might expect, I've been reading actually quite a bit. So I read the sequel to My Name is Asher Lev, which I'd read previously.
We talked about that about a month ago. Yep.
Yeah. So the sequel is called The Gift of Asher Lev, and it picks up a good deal of time later. Asher's married and has 2 kids and is a very successful artist, but still struggling with his questions of identity. I felt like it was, some sequels feel like the author is kind of groping to find something to say about the same characters. This felt like such a natural progression that I honestly felt it should have been like just the second half of the novel. I know he wrote it considerably later, so it wasn't published even anywhere near the same time, but it really felt like this, like just the second half of the book.
That's cool.
The themes were really good, and I just love the way it developed the story. It was perfect. One of the best sequels I've read in a long time. So I highly recommend that if you've read My Name is Asher Love and wonder, is the sequel worth it? Because oftentimes they aren't. This one totally was.
It's like the second part of the book.
Right.
That's good.
Then let's see. On the plane, I found that I didn't have any music and I really wanted to listen to something. So I ended up fishing through my audiobook file, and I only had a few downloaded to my phone. That Wi-Fi was totally not working on the plane either. So I ended up listening to Rosemary Sutcliffe's The Shining Company, which is a novel that's set sometime after the Romans have left Britain, and it involves a bunch of Celtic tribes fighting off the Saxon invaders, and sort of making a heroic last stand against the Saxons. Because of course it's no shock they don't succeed because the Saxons ultimately conquer England, which is why we speak English and not Gaelic.
Right.
But it's good. It's a really great story, and I didn't quite finish it, but I'm almost done. Then I also started reading a book that's sort of a fictional memoir. Actually, I'm not even sure how much of it's fictional. It's kind of a memoir called A Ghost in the Throat by, now I'm going to forget her name.
The Ghost in the
Doreen
Throat. Oh, I can't even pronounce that. It's Irish.
It's
up here. Doreen Nee.
I can't read that because because
you're blind.
I'm blind. Doreen Nee Grifa. So
I'll put it in the show notes.
it's very much about her experience of being a young mother, with babies and toddlers and nursing and doing household chores. And a lot of it felt very, very familiar. I mean, she's in Ireland, I'm here, but other than that, like the life is very similar. And her obsession that sort of drives her through these very difficult years of being a new mom is with a particular classic Irish poem called The Lament of Art O'Leary, which is a poem that was written in Irish, and it's a keen, which is a traditional Irish form of lament. And it was written in about 1773. This woman named Eileen Duve O'Connell, or Dark Eileen, had married a handsome young soldier named Art O'Leary, and he was killed by an Englishman because he wouldn't sell the Englishman his horse.
Okay.
And so the poem is a lament. She begins with her remembering the first time she saw him and how she fell in love with him, and she ran off with him despite the protests of her family. And then she goes and curses the name of the man who killed him and remembers all the wonderful things that they had. It's a beautiful poem. And so the Ghost in the Throat, she's kind of obsessed with the poem, and she begins by finding every translation of it she can, and then she decides that none of them are good enough, and so she writes her own translation, and that's not good enough, and so she becomes obsessed with trying to uncover as much of the author's life as she can, despite the fact that there's almost nothing written about her. And I'm only about a third of the way through, but it's really good. And I think it's partly because she's so similar to myself, like a mom who is obsessed with literature and has this sort of deep life of the mind while she's in the trenches of motherhood.
Is the poem real?
Yeah, it's a real poem.
Okay.
And this is really this is a memoir, so it's more or less true, although she's clearly taking some liberties with her story in some places.
I mean, the character in the novel is the different name than the author.
It's just an I, first person narrative.
Right. Oh, there's no character name.
There's no character. It's just first person narrator, and you're in her head, and you don't really know where or how or if it differs from the author's life.
Okay.
The author is herself a published poet in both Irish and English. So I don't know really where the story is going or where it's going to get there. I know she's so far spent some time in the intensive care unit after her daughter was actually in the intensive care unit after she was born. And that was really heartbreaking and gripping. Like, is her daughter going to survive? Is she going to die? Is this going to be like a horrible, heartbreaking story? And right now she's like trying to like find the place where the house was where Eileen Duve lived. And yeah, it's very Irish again, dark and depressing, and it's a theme.
Yes.
But you know, I studied Irish studies, so it is my theme.
Irish people are happy, pleasant, fun people often.
Of course.
But their literature, including their visual literature, is like Russians. It's depressing at times.
It can be, except I find that the Russians can be cheerful a little bit.
Yeah.
But I find Irish literature is often not as dark as Russian literature.
Russian literature is almost fatalistic in that sense.
Yeah. Irish literature can be very happy and pleasant and cheerful. And then it can take a turn for the dark.
Yeah. I mean, Irish movies can be cheerful, but there's almost always this dark moment in them. Like, yeah, even in the comedies.
Yep. Anyway. And then I've also been reading Malcolm Geet's Waiting for the Word, which is just a little anthology of Advent poems. Mm-hmm. And it's really good.
Which, by the way, I sent you a link that King Charles had requested that a Malcolm Geet poem be read at the King's Carol service for Advent.
Yes.
And apparently Malcolm Geet was quoted as saying you could have knocked him over with a feather when he found out.
He's really lovely. And
he's a hobbit. He's basically a hobbit.
He is. Anyway, Waiting for the Word has some of Malcolm Geet's poems, but it's also an anthology that includes other people's poems too. And it's just like one a day it's like an advent calendar, but poetry.
Cool.
I have not been reading it regularly every day, but I've dipped into it a few times.
So I'm reading a new book that called Travels with George in Search of Washington and His Legacy by Nathaniel Philbrick. Nathaniel Philbrick is a prolific history author. He's written things like In the Heart of Darkness, which is about the South Pole expedition. He's written about several books about George Washington I've read. So this one is a slightly different book. It's not a straight history book. It starts with the fact that when George Washington became president, he embarked on a series of journeys. First was his journey from Mount Vernon to New York, which was the capital at the time. And then he went on a tour of New England, and he went a tour out into Long Island and went down to the South. So he toured the whole country, which was partially an effort to solidify the bonds of the Republic, because it was still a fairly loose conglomeration of quarreling states at that point. And he was trying to forge a new national unity among them. And so he's telling this story, Philbrick is, while at the same time telling the story of his own journeys in Washington's footsteps. So he and his wife follow along. And so you also hear about their adventures as they drive or take a boat in some cases, these places with him, and what it was like then, what it's like now, some of the historical things they encounter, the people or the stories, but also just even some of the obstacles, the travel obstacles they encounter as well. So it's kind of interesting. It's a little offbeat. It feels more memoir-ish than straight history. One of the things he's doing is trying to answer the question, does George Washington still matter in America in the 21st century? And he brings up slavery a lot. And almost too much. I don't know. I mean, can you say it's too much? I mean, it was a terrible, horrible thing. If anything, it highlights the complexity of the slavery question. It's not as simple. He was a slave owner, and therefore he needs to be eliminated. I mean, the fact is how people dealt with and processed slavery in their time is a lot like how people deal with a lot of the cultural issues of our time. And sometimes people have complex, well, we need to outlaw abortion. Oh, well, we can't just ban it because, we need to change hearts and minds. And, so there's all these different nuances, and slavery was a similarly complex and nuanced issue. One of the points that Washington made in his discussions with people was, if we just declare slavery, because he was opposed to slavery, even though he continued to own slaves, which was, kind of contradictory. But he said, if we just declare slavery illegal in the country, we're going to split. They will fall apart. And one of the interesting things that he makes a point about is, it was not, at the time, people didn't feel like there was a guarantee this was going to last, the American experiment. There was still some thought, even like by people like Washington and others, that in a generation, this could all fall apart and Britain could be back. We would be back part of the British Empire. The whole war fought for nothing, that we would be taken back. The people who were spies, for instance, like the Culper gang, they didn't reveal the names of the members of the Culper gang. He visited them, but quietly, like without revealing who they were, afterward as a thank you tour, but didn't reveal them publicly because they were afraid that if the British were ever back, they would be endangered. Kind of fascinating. So it's I'm about halfway through the book, and it's pretty good. It's not the best book I've read by Philbrick yet, but I kind of prefer a straight historical account. But some of the New England places was kind of fun. Like, there's a place in Billerica where there's I forget which hotel it was. There's a hotel, and there's this like two parking lots, and in between the parking lots is a cellar hole with a marker, and the marker says, "This is the location of the tavern where John Adams and John Hancock hid out the night after the Lexington Green, the battle, the shot heard around the world on Lexington Green. Is this location? It's like in between two parking lots in Billerica, behind a not a Holiday Inn, but like a Best Western or something. It's just kind of like the idea that history is everywhere around us. It's kind of fascinating in thinking about the historical places. And this book kind of gives the sense of the origin of the stories of Washington slept here and Washington Street. And a lot of these things is because of this tour, or several tours that Washington took through the entire country at the time. So it's a pretty good book. I'm enjoying it. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I tend to like memoirs like that. That sounds like my sort of thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you might like this one, especially because of the more personal aspects of it too. Philbrick has been at this for a while, writing history books, and so this is a slightly different version, and I can see where an author would want to kind of do something a little different from the usual that he's been doing, just kind of mix it up a bit. So Yeah, so that's what we've been reading and watching. So let's talk about the fourth Sunday of Advent. This year, we get to have a whole week of the fourth week of Advent, which is, as obviously rare to get the whole 7 days.
I love it when we get a whole week of. Part of me just wishes that when
Advent would start 4 full weeks out from Christmas.
Yes, 4 full weeks out from Christmas. And so you get 4 full weeks plus whatever a little bit, as opposed to the 4 Sundays, but sometimes sometimes Christmas might be Monday. And so you get
right.
The fourth Sunday of Advent is Christmas Eve.
If the 25th is a Sunday, then the first Sunday of Advent should be a week earlier.
Yes.
So that the fourth Sunday of Advent. So what would that Sunday be then? The fifth Sunday of Advent?
Yes. Why not?
Well, then why don't we have a whole extra fifth week?
I would be fine with that.
You see where this is going. We'd have 26, or 52 weeks of Advent. Anyway, so it is the fourth Sunday of Advent, and Father Leo was the celebrant of our mass. Father Leo is not a parish priest. He's not
a Holy Cross
diocesan priest. He's a Holy Cross priest from Stoneham College who helps out. And the gospel was from Matthew. It was the not infancy narrative. Well, sort of. It's Matthew's version of the infancy narrative.
Right. Joseph decides to divorce Mary quietly, and the angel comes and says, "Don't do that." He
gets the dream.
Yeah.
And so Father Leo said, compared to Luke, Matthew's infancy narrative is very spare. It's like it doesn't have all the extras, the shepherds and going to Bethlehem and all the other stuff. It's just Mary and Joseph and the angel. And that's it. We focus on 2 people as part of God's plan to save us. Right? It's just 2 people. And in a likewise, God invites us to participate in his plan of salvation. So what we're seeing in Joseph and Mary is the template of how God approaches us. And God's invitation to them brought some real world challenges. Mary had to become a single, in a sense, an unmarried, I know betrothal was a different thing back then, but in the eyes of everyone, being pregnant before the final marriage it was seen as adulterous and could have resulted in her being stoned. And Joseph, as Father Leo said, probably didn't want to divorce Mary, but that seemed like the only solution. And so they are presented with real world challenges. And like when God calls us, it's not smooth sailing. There's real challenges that we have to go through in life. It's not just because you follow God's call and you think you've discerned God's call and challenges come up doesn't mean that you discerned badly or wrongly.
Okay. Or like the meme that says God has a important plan for your life with the picture of the Christians being eaten by lions.
Right.
That's one of my favorite memes ever.
Right. I mean, which is a takeoff on the some evangelical preachers. God has a wonderful plan for your life, which implies that if only you should accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, it's smooth sailing from here on out. That's not true. That's not going to happen. Anyone who tells you that is selling something. The other thing he mentions is, so Mary sees an angel, but Joseph dreams an angel.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, that's more challenging. Like if you see an angel, it's like, well, unless I believe I've gone insane, I'm actually seeing something. I have evidence of my eyes. It's hard to deny this. But if you have a dream, it's possible to dismiss a dream, as, wow, that was a pretty vivid, lucid dream. Wow, that was wild. I suppose I could take it as a message, but it was probably just a dream. You could do that. But he didn't. So I think it's fascinating.
Of course, the Bible is full of people, including the first Joseph, who
dreamed. Yes. No, that's true. That's true. In Jacob's ladder, the dream of the angels going up and down the ladder. No, that's true. Dreams are a portent, but just in general, they both have an encounter with an angel, and the angel has the message, do not be afraid. And that's, God's call to us. Don't be afraid. We should look to Joseph and his response. He trusted in God. He had faith in God's plan for him. We should have faith in God's plan for us. He accepted his life would never be what he expected it to be, and yet was never afraid. And so Father, finished it by telling us, God tells us today, be not afraid. I am with you always. And be not afraid was Pope John Paul's first message upon being elected. Be not afraid. So I think that's a good homily for the fourth Sunday of Advent as we head into Christmas. It's a nice way to meditate on this last week because, as usual, Christmas, getting ready for Christmas can be crazy. Especially when you've spent the third week of Advent in a sort of limbo in Texas.
I do not feel like I had a third week of Advent. It was weird. It did not feel Advent-y.
It didn't feel that way 5 years ago when we were we were in Texas the same week 5 years ago. I don't remember feeling that way, but maybe it did.
I don't know.
See, I wish I kept a journal back then. The past year I've kept a journal.
I think,
but I wish I'd kept a journal back then. Yeah.
I mean, and maybe it's just about like me and my letting myself be distracted by the challenges of traveling.
There's probably also the uncertainty involved in all of it, since you didn't have a clear knowledge of when you were going to come home. There was no, after the Tuesday passed, the original departure date, you were kind of up in the air. And so it's kind of an uncertain return, uncertainty about that. So it kind of leaves you hanging. So I can see that. Yeah. Whereas also, 5 years ago, we knew exactly we were coming home.
Also, there's something about taking care of a sick child that kind of puts you into a weird limbo state anyway.
Yeah.
I always feel like that. Like when I'm sick or when one of the kids is sick, time doesn't seem to pass in the right way. Maybe it's just a mom thing. I don't know.
No, when you get in the trenches, that's sort of what dads say. You end up in the trenches of childcare and the trying to get them well and all that. And so other things kind of fall away. So I can see that. Well, as we prepare for Christmas, we don't have a lot that we need to do. It's just, we're going to, clean the house and get things neatened up and do a little baking, I think.
Uh-huh.
We're going to make Christmas cookies and some stuff like that. But
and finish cleaning up the house because, it didn't look horrible. I like to spend, the week before Christmas making sure it's clean.
Uh-huh. Okay. I thought things were pretty good, but maybe being away and coming home and seeing with fresh eyes, you see how it is.
Yeah. Well, I usually try to make them vacuum the floors as soon as they get to a certain point. And
I did. I made them vacuum. Now I couldn't oversee the whole thing because I'm here working, but anyway, we'll agree to disagree on the state of the house. Hey, if you want to get the house clean, I'm all for that. So that's that. I'm not going to disagree with that. All right, let's wrap things up there before it devolves any further. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Joshua S., Jeff S., Catherine O., Father Brian Z., and Peter M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And that's it for this time. Find links from our discussion in our show notes at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Send your feedback at the StarQuest Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Send us an email at bets@sqpn.com or visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. Write a review at Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community and reach more listeners. Now, before we go, I just want to make one note is that the next time we would normally record would be Sunday, which would be Christmas. We're not going to record an episode of Christmas. So we'll be taking a week off. So you'll get to hear all about our Christmas happenings in our next episode a week later. So that means I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year because it will be New Year's Eve when we record next. So you won't even hear this until 2023 or hear that until 2023. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone. And until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest. Hi, everyone. This is Dom Bettinelli, CEO of StarQuest, with a special message as we approach the Christmas season. This past year, the StarQuest Network has continued to expand our mission of exploring the intersection of faith and pop culture through our many entertaining and informative programs. Now we need your generous financial support to keep producing the shows you love and to reach new audiences with more of the life-changing and uplifting programming we've been creating for more than a decade. That's why it's very important that we hear from you this Advent and Christmas, the time when nonprofits receive most of their support for the year. If you are already a supporter of StarQuest, we thank you and ask you to prayerfully consider increasing your support at this time. If you're not yet a supporter, please become one now. Every gift counts. Could you give $15 or even just $10 per month? Whatever level of support you can offer, please show your support for SQPN this Christmas. And remember that your gifts are tax deductible. Just go to sqpn.com/give. That's sqpn.com/give. May God bless you this Advent and may you have a blessed Christmas season.